I have the right to see my sister get married,
to get my driver's license,
to have a career, to water my plants,
to argue with my mom about everything,
the right to go camping,
to go on a road trip,
to learn the constellations,
to eat a really good pulled pork sandwich,
the right to have a terrible breakup,
to have a first kiss.
Ew.
Abrazar a mis hijos.
the right to grow old,
The right to grow old.
to sing in the shower,
the right to fall in love,
to feel safe,
The right to see what I look like when I grow up.
The right to not be shot.
the right to not be shot
At a theater.
to school,
at a nightclub,
At a bowling alley.
the right
the right to not be shot,
to not be shot,
To not be shot.
be shot,
shot,
To not be shot.
To not have to mourn my friends.
To not be shot.
The right to a future that our son will never have.
On February 14th, 2018, our son Joaquin Oliver was shot at Parkland High School.
In his name, we're suing the United States government for putting gun rights over his right to live.
Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I'm Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. In today's episode, we are going to discuss an issue that has brought a lot of grief to the citizens in the US as it continues to evoke polarizing sentiments and divide the political class, the issue of gun violence. And to discuss the same, we are joined by Mr. Jonathan Lowy. Mr. Jonathan is the president and founder of Global Action on Gun Violence, the only nonprofit working with countries and people around the world to stop the global harms from guns by using litigation and human rights. Mr. Jonathan has been litigating and winning trailblazing, impactful lawsuits and advocating for gun violence prevention for over 25 years. Welcome to IGPP Expert Talk, sir.
My pleasure.
So historically, we see that firearms or the prevalence of gun culture is common in society when there's a sense of insecurity or instability. But there are about 120.5 firearms for every 100 American residents, or about 32% of Americans own a gun. Why is that a case in a highly developed society like US? Is there a prevailing sense of insecurity or distrust in the state system?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons why people own guns in the United States. One reason is some people believe that guns are effective for home defense and self-defense. Actually, the social science tells you that if you have a gun in the home, it's more likely to result in harm to your family and to others. But the gun industry has done an effective job of convincing people that the science isn't true. So that there are significant number of people who have guns for that self-defense reason. There's some people who have guns for hunting, and then there's some who have guns because they believe that they need it as a way to take on the government if it becomes tyrannical. In this day and age with sophisticated military, the US military, obviously up to nuclear weapons, but a lot below that it seems rather absurd for someone to think that they can take on the US military with their guns. But that is a view. I do think, though, it's also important to know that we have numbers about how many guns are made, how many guns are sold in the US. There's a significant number of those guns that are going to the criminal market. that are being trafficked to criminals in the United States, but also to Mexico and to Haiti and Jamaica and Canada and other countries. And a lot of times that's not reflected. So when we see, there's more than one gun a person in the US, maybe that actually a significant number of those guns are, made and sold in the US, but in the hands of the Mexican cartels, in the hands of gangs in the Caribbean and other countries.
We hear of shootings in American schools, bars, restaurants. Have there been a recent spike in gun-related violence in the US, or because of social media and because of the information age that we are living in, just that the attention on these incidents is more?
Well, I think this past year there's been a somewhat of a decline in crime, but over the past number of years, the trend has been up. And the last recorded year was, I think, around 48,000 deaths as a result of gunfire in the US, which was significantly higher than just a few years ago. Ever since the assault weapon ban, which we used to have in the US we had it in effect from 1994 to 2004, and then it was lapsed and Congress did not reauthorize it. Ever since that happened in 2004, there's been more and more mass shootings, some of the biggest mass shootings in US and world history, actually. And so there have been a lot of things that have been getting worse, with some immediate improvements, but as a general trend over the past 20 years, I think most of the trend is negative and is increasing gun violence, mass shootings, and also trafficking to from the US to other countries.
Why are gun laws so lax in the US? We hear that the age of drinking in US is 21, while in some of the states, the age where you can purchase a long gun or an assault rifle is only 18, and that completely defies logic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, the US gun laws are really much weaker and much worse than most people realize. You mentioned the age limit, but that's really sort of the least of the problems. The fact is, the global standard in virtually every other country is there's licensing and registration. So if you're going to get a gun, you have to have some sort of screening and vetting, and then you eventually are issued a license. There's none of that in the United States. Some states have some licensing and something like registration, but under federal law, and the law of most states, there's absolutely no licensing. There's no registration. There's a minimal background check that's done if you buy a gun from a gun dealer. However, under US federal law, you are allowed to buy a gun from someone who's not a licensed gun dealer, and that person does not have to do any check whatsoever. So literally in the United States, you could have somebody who has committed murder, they've been in prison, they get released from prison, they could go on the internet to some big websites that have private sellers, they could go to a gun show, and they could buy all the guns they want, no questions asked, no background check, no record whatsoever. And federal law basically allows that. There's really, again, most people just don't understand how big a problem we have. Now, why do we have this problem? The fact is, in the United States, about 90% of Americans want some of these laws to be tighter. About 90% of Americans, for example, want background checks required for all gun sales. Majority of people want assault weapons banned and a number of other fixes, but that has not become the law. And the reason is, to get to your question, is the politics, basically. I mean, the gun lobby, traditionally the National Rifle Association, NRA, have been extremely strong. The NRA has now had scandals and bankruptcy, so they're a little weaker, but still, there is a lot of political fear by a number of politicians, even though there's only a pretty small minority of people who are against reasonable gun laws. But the way politicians read this is that those sort of extreme gun people have been single issue voters, or where the one thing they care about, or that they care about most, I should say, is gun issues. And yet people who are on the other side, believe in reasonable gun regulation, tend to not be single issue voters. They tend to care about a whole bunch of other issues as well. And so politically, some politicians have taken the view that they want to cater to the sort of pro-gun rights people. And that's what's happened. I think that's changing among the American people. I think more and more people are supporting stronger gun laws. We're seeing politicians more and more embracing it. So I do think it will change, but it will take a long time. And we're so far behind where we should be that it will take a very long time, most likely, for the US to catch up with the rest of the world as far as how guns are regulated.
To talk about the political class, and particularly in the context of the elections, we saw that there were two attempts made on former President Donald Trump's life, and both involved the use of firearms. Yet he has never made a pledge to regulate arm usage in the nation. And even Kamala Harris has proclaimed that she and Tim Walz are proud gun owners. Why this sense of pride, or to publicly proclaim that one owns guns? Does it go back to the Second Amendment? Is there a sense of patriotism related to owning gun? What is it?
Well, I mean, it's politics. It's all politics. I mean, Donald Trump is a good example. He's someone who, before he was running for president, he's someone who supported an assault weapon ban. He supported some, reasonable gun laws. But when he went into politics, he went in the other direction, to a very sort of pro-NRA view. And then, as you mentioned, even politicians who support strong gun laws, like Vice President Harris and others, do often want to make clear to gun owners that they do not want to take away anyone's guns, other than perhaps assault weapons. So it is all politics, and it's too bad. You should not have to sort of make excuses for why you believe in reasonable gun laws that would protect the lives of children. You shouldn't have to begin that sentence, I'm a gun owner, but I believe in assault weapon ban, or background checks, or licensing. And you shouldn't need a preface to the sentence of, I think the most important thing is that we protect human life from gunfire. But that is just the politics, or at least the way many politicians read the politics.
You also mentioned gun lobby, which has certainly declined in how powerful it is, but it has overtly or subtly influenced policy decision on gun regulation. If it is no secret that there exists a gun lobby which is working for its own interest and not the public, why are there not calls to dismantle it or demands to politicians to heed to public welfare, to the majority of people who want stricter regulations regarding gun ownership and not heed to the interest of gun lobbies?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, certainly, the NRA and other gun groups have a right to express their views. However much I disagree with them, they certainly have the right to do that. Problem is, what's the reaction to their views? And the problem is, why are politicians listening to lobbies which really are speaking for the gun industry? I mean, that's really what they're about. Even when they say they're for gun owners, they say they're for gun rights, really isn't the case. I mean, in fact, most gun owners support universal background checks for gun sales and some other reforms, positions that the NRA doesn't take. So that what these groups really are doing is they're mouthpieces for the industry. The industry is trying to sell guns, and they don't care really what happens to those guns. They don't care if those guns are trafficked to criminals in the US or to other countries, as long as they make money off it. And, it's $1 billion industry in the US, and it's got, this some political support, and you put that together, and, some politicians, take this, really abhorrent view that, they see, their constituents slaughtered in elementary schools and high schools and colleges and bars and music festivals and churches and synagogues and temples and shopping malls, and every place you can imagine. People have been slaughtered in the United States. And you have a significant number of politicians, senators and congresspeople and presidents whose reaction to that is, let's not do anything to prevent it, except things that might help the gun industry, like, encourage people to buy more guns, and, maybe make the doors in schools stronger and more bulletproof, and which, these are policies that in any other country in the world, they would laugh at these policies. I mean, they would say, of course, the answer is deal with access to guns, but if you're basically doing the bidding of the gun industry, that's not an answer you consider. And to put it bluntly, you have politicians who favor gun industry profits and influence over the lives of people in the US. That's just a sad reality.
We often see now videos where they'll explain how you can have a certain sort of equipment near the school doors, which will prevent the shooter from seeing what is happening in the classroom, or some sort of like shelter for students within the class. And it's just extremely comic in a very sad way that you're talking about school, and you have to talk about, you're not talking about how to make it more freer, creative, but just to protect the students and the kids in the school. It would certainly be laughable in many parts of the world. My next question: you're the founder and president of Global Action on Gun Violence. Please tell us a little about your mission and some of the work you have been doing. Why do you feel that gun violence is a global problem?
Sure. Well, I mean, for the first part of your question, I mean, gun violence causes more deaths every year than all of the wars on the planet combined. So it is an extraordinary global problem, just by the numbers. And the majority of those gun deaths occur in the Americas. And that is no coincidence. I mean, it is largely because of the United States, not just the extraordinarily high levels of gun violence in the United States that adds quite a bit to those death totals, but also because, you know, the US uniquely in the world has both this massive gun industry and also extremely lax regulation, which allows for gun trafficking, where guns can be trafficked to other countries. And I created Global Action on Gun Violence really for a twofold reason. One, I believe that we need to do more, we need to act bolder, we need new strategies to stop gun violence in the United States and to stop the trafficking of guns from the United States to other countries at its source. And its source is the US gun industry. And so I think that using international action, working with other countries, and bringing trailblazing new types of litigation against the gun industry, bringing human rights actions, these are strategies that have not really been tried. That is an effective way to address the source of the problem, which is the US gun industry. And the other aspect of this is we have an obligation, I believe, to help stop the violence in other countries outside of the US where the US policy or US gun industry is causing that problem. And, you know, Mexico is an example. Mexico has one, or according to some reports, 2 gun stores in the entire country. They've got very strong laws. You have licensing. It's very difficult for criminals to be buying guns in Mexico. They shouldn't have a gun violence problem. They shouldn't have a heavily armed criminal enterprises like the cartels, but they do. They have one of the worst gun violence problems in the world, and the cartels are armed to the teeth. You know, how does that happen? It happens because the United States, laws and the United States, the US gun industry's practices are so reckless. It's very easy for traffickers to get guns in the US and bring them to Mexico. You have traffickers that go across the border, they'll go to a gun store in the US, they'll buy maybe 5 guns, maybe 10 guns, maybe more. They will pay in cash. And it's obvious that that person's gun trafficker. Then they'll return to that store a few days or a few weeks later and buy more guns. And they'll do that continually. And these are, obviously gun traffickers. If you're a responsible gun dealer, you would not sell those guns. But unfortunately, there's a small minority of gun dealers that are willing to supply those obvious traffickers in order to make money. And they're manufacturers who are more than happy to supply those dealers, knowing that they're supplying the criminal market in order to profit off the criminal market, both in the US and in Mexico and other countries as well. And, Global Action on Gun Violence deals with that problem, both in the US and in other countries. And it's really like, imagine if you had a country that had no industry, no pollution, but its next door neighbor was like dumping toxins that were flooding across the border and killing people in that country. That's basically what's happening with US guns to Mexico, to Jamaica, to Haiti, to Canada, and other countries as well. And we've just got to deal with that. We've got to deal with it at the source, and that's what we do at GAGV.
Thank you so much for sparing time for this